Welcome back to Important Updates, global news without the noise. Subscribe to stay updated. I'm sure you've heard the news. The world is watching the South China Sea as tensions spike. China has sent a surge of warships into contested waters, right after U.S. naval exercises with allies like the Philippines. This is a high-stakes power play, military vessels maneuvering in a region vital for global trade and peace. The Philippines, with its own claims, has raised its military alert, bracing for any outcome. While disputes here aren't new, the scale and seriousness of recent military activity are unprecedented. China is asserting dominance. The U.S. is signaling commitment to allies and freedom of navigation. The immediate trigger: a joint U.S.-Philippines naval drill in waters China claims as its own. Beijing called it a provocation, and responded by dispatching modern warships to shadow the Americans and Filipinos. It's a tense standoff. One wrong move could spark a crisis. For Filipinos, this isn't just news. It's a threat to their livelihoods and security. Fishermen have faced harassment from Chinese vessels for years. Manila now walks a tightrope defending its territory without provoking a larger conflict. The U.S. presence reassures some, but also risks turning these waters into a battleground. The region's future hangs in the balance with global implications. The world is watching, hoping for restraint. The stakes have never been higher. China's warships in the South China Sea are not ordinary vessels. They're advanced, heavily armed, and built for power projection. The fleet includes modern destroyers like the Type 052D, rivaling U.S. counterparts. Deploying these ships is a calculated show of force, reinforcing China's sweeping 9-line claim. When the U.S. and allies conduct drills inside this line, China sees it as a direct challenge. By sending warships, Beijing is making its claim visible and intimidating rivals. China's navy has rapidly transformed into a blue water force, capable of operating far from home. The presence of destroyers and frigates signals readiness for high-level confrontation, not just routine patrols. This is part of a broader strategy. China has built artificial islands, turning reefs into military outposts with runways and ports. These unsinkable carriers let China project power quickly across the region. Warships now deploy from these bases, not just the mainland. Each deployment is more than a reaction. It's a step toward permanent control. The message is clear. China intends to dominate these waters. The world is forced to respond. The South China Sea is now a stage for military brinkmanship. The stakes control of a vital global artery. The contest is far from over. The United States, though distant, is deeply invested in the South China Sea. Its main goal: keep the Indo-Pacific free and open for all. U.S. Navy ships regularly conduct freedom of navigation operations. Sailing through waters China claims to challenge those assertions. The latest U.S. move: a carrier strike group and Filipino vessels conducting joint drills, was a direct signal of resolve. Aircraft carriers, floating air bases, bristling with jets, are the centerpiece of this show of force. The U.S. is reminding allies and rivals alike it can operate anywhere, anytime. America's presence reassures partners like the Philippines, which rely on U.S. security guarantees. Defense treaties obligate the U.S. to help defend regional allies if attacked. But these operations are risky. Warships from rival powers maneuvering in close quarters can lead to dangerous incidents. There have been near misses before. A single miscalculation could trigger a crisis. The U.S. sees itself as upholding international law. China sees provocation. This fundamental disagreement fuels the tension. The South China Sea is now a flashpoint between two giants. The risk of escalation is real. Allies watch closely, counting on U.S. resolve. The world holds its breath. The next move could change everything. The stakes are global. For the Philippines, the South China Sea dispute is personal. It's their backyard. In 2016, an international tribunal ruled in Manila's favor, rejecting China's sweeping claims. China ignored the ruling, continuing to assert control. The Philippines has now put its military on high alert, increasing patrols and readiness. Manila's message: it will defend its sovereignty. Filipino fishermen, long harassed by Chinese vessels, face daily threats to their livelihoods. The government faces public pressure to act. but must avoid provoking a disastrous conflict. The U.S. alliance offers security, but China remains a crucial economic partner. The Philippines is strengthening its military, deepening U.S. ties, and building regional partnerships. It's a delicate balancing act, survival in a tough neighborhood. The stakes are national security and economic survival. The choices are difficult, the risks immense. The Philippines stands firm, but the path forward is uncertain. The South China Sea is a global lifeline. 1/3 of all maritime trade, worth over $3 trillion, passes through these waters. Any disruption would send shockwaves through the world economy. Beneath the sea lie vast reserves of oil and gas, fueling competition among regional powers. Control of these resources means economic power. The sea's fisheries feed millions, but overfishing and island building have devastated marine life. The fight for dwindling fish stocks adds to the tension. At its core, the conflict is about rules. Will international law or raw power decide the future? The US and allies push for a rules-based order. China challenges it. The outcome will set a precedent for global disputes. The world's prosperity and stability are at stake. The South China Sea is more than a regional issue. It's a test for the international system. The world is watching. If tensions keep rising, the risks are grave. The most immediate danger, an accidental clash, ships or jets colliding, sparking a crisis. Even a minor incident could escalate rapidly, with national pride and political pressure fueling retaliation. A deliberate move, like China occupying another disputed feature, could force the US to respond under its defense treaty with the Philippines. The nightmare scenario: direct US-China conflict, catastrophic for both nations and the world. War would devastate economies, shatter supply chains, and risk massive loss of life. Even without open war, a gray zone conflict, constant harassment and intimidation, could cement Chinese dominance. Smaller nations would be squeezed. International law eroded. The balance of power in Asia could shift permanently. The stakes are not just regional, they're global. The world cannot afford miscalculation. The need for restraint is urgent. The Philippines and its neighbors aren't standing still. They're building alliances to counter China's assertiveness. The US-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty is being modernized, with more joint exercises and expanded US access to bases. Manila is also forging closer ties with Japan and Australia, conducting joint patrols and receiving new patrol vessels. These partnerships send a united message: aggression will be met with collective resistance. Within ASEAN, unity is elusive. Some members are reluctant to challenge China. Still, countries like Vietnam and Malaysia are upgrading their defenses. The Philippines uses assertive transparency, publicizing Chinese actions to rally international support. Photos and videos of harassment at sea expose the gap between China's words and deeds. This strategy aims to win global opinion and pressure Beijing diplomatically. The region is weaving a web of deterrence. The hope strength in numbers will keep the peace. The challenge, turning alliances into real security. The outcome will shape Asia's future. To China, the South China Sea is a core interest, historically, economically, and strategically. Beijing sees US military presence as a threat, and its own actions as defensive. Building island bases and sending warships are, in China's view, necessary to protect its sovereignty and trade routes. The US sees the issue as upholding international law and preventing a dangerous precedent. If China can rewrite the rules here, others may try elsewhere. America's credibility is on the line. Failing to support allies would undermine its global influence. For Washington, it's about more than one sea. It's about the world order, economic stability, and alliance trust. Both sides see existential stakes. Neither wants to back down. The confrontation is about power, principles, and the future of the global system. The world watches as two giants face off. The South China Sea standoff is a global issue, not just a regional one. A conflict here would disrupt trade, raise prices, and threaten prosperity worldwide. For Southeast Asians, it's about security, resources, and national survival. They're caught between superpowers, hoping for a peaceful, lawful resolution. Their struggle deserves global attention and support. The outcome will define the rules of the 21st century. Will law or force decide the future? The world must choose diplomacy over confrontation. The ripples from these waters reach every shore. Peace is the only path forward.